Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to panel session number 3. The title of our session is The Evolving Landscape of Business Events, Embracing Technology and Sustainability. And I'd like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Mike Williams. And he has over 30 years of experience in destination marketing and business events. And at GainingEdge since 2004, he has helped establish MICEP and led initiatives like AIME's growth and the Best Cities Global Alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mike Williams.
I have to say first, it's great to be back. I've been in absence from KL for a very long time, but I always consider this my second home, so I'm very pleased to be back and to see everybody here today. But I have a very illustrious group of people I'd like to introduce to the stage today. We've got one newbie to KL, so I want to give you a big welcome to Shawn. Shawn Daws is the Senior Technical Project Manager for the events industry for Arinex, which is one of the largest, if not the largest PCO in Australia. Shawn, would you like to join us on stage? First time in KL, and he's looking forward to some good street food. So if you've got any good suggestions, please let him know. Not a newcomer to KL and a regular face on the speaker circuit, we've got Florence Chua, from the Managing Director for APAC for PCMA. So welcome, Florence, again. A very familiar face. Big round of applause, come on. Are you awake? Please take a seat. And I've also got a newcomer to Malaysia Business Events, Dr. Guang Lu, who's the co-founder of Beyond Expo, founder and CEO of TechNode Group, based in Shanghai. So welcome, and you're a regular to KL as well, right? So please take a seat. Today's topic is building on what we've already discussed today. It's all about the trends and the changing landscape we're in with the business events industry here in Malaysia and around the Asia-Pacific region. But we're going to take a slightly different twist. There's some of the things you'll hear today. We're trying to build on what was discussed this morning. What we want to focus the attention on today is we want to do a temperature check. We know about all these new technologies and all these new trends about sustainability and technology that are coming up, but are we actually embracing these technologies? Are we embracing sustainability? How are they being implemented into the marketplace? And how's it going? Is it generating ROI? And is it bringing value to the people that actually are embracing it, the companies that are embracing it? So we really want to see how it's being used in the marketplace, and we've got 3 experts here to do that. So we're going to start off just with a general question to kick off. What are the real fundamental changes to the landscape of our industry since COVID? I know that before COVID, things like new tech, sustainability were all buzzwords. They're all being developed. But how has the landscape really changed since COVID came about? I'll start off with Shawn. You want to kick off and...
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I guess more the question is what hasn't changed. It's,
what hasn't changed?
Yeah, it's an entirely different industry really to what it was 5 years ago. But I think that the big difference has been that we're seeing a lot more, I suppose, expectation of the conferencing event industry by the clients and by the delegates. So there's a huge expectation for sustainability. There's a huge expectation for technology and all the latest features. And learning to embrace those things has been, for us, the big challenge, because I think prior to COVID, we were all the experts, we knew how conferences were run, everything was all just going along fine, whereas now there's a lot more of a focus on understanding new trends, on understanding what people want, and then learning how to deliver those in an effective way. So for us, I think initially the biggest change was coming out of COVID, where everything had gone to an online platform, making the shift back into in-person events, and realizing that there's now this new expectation that we have a hybrid setup, where there's people on site networking and seeing events in person, but also being able to watch those later on after the event, perhaps, or to be able to see the content from overseas in their own time zone when they feel like it, when they want to do it. So adapting to those changes and meeting those expectations has been a massive effort from our part, and we've done that a lot with technology through stuff we've developed on our own and through products and whatnot that we use have dealings with our vendors about.
Before COVID, things like sustainability technology were good to have sort of things, nice to have sort of things, but is there demand? I mean, are the clients demanding it? Are they really demanding that this has to be in place if we're going to hold a conference or engage a PCO to do their work? Is that really happening?
Absolutely, it is happening. I think that there's an understanding that technology is now going to be part of the whole process. That's almost a built-in expectation. The idea now of showing up on site and having a pen and paper registration is laughable. It's not something we'd even consider anymore. Everybody knows how to use a QR code. Everybody has a mobile phone, and that has changed the landscape in terms of what we can deliver and how it's delivered. But for us, I think the biggest change coming out of COVID, we became the first PCO to get our carbon neutral certification. And that, I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it's because of that, but since then, literally every client we have has raised the question of sustainability. How are we going to meet those sustainability targets? What are we doing to encourage our vendors to use more sustainable methods? And that conversation is literally happening every single time we have a client now, and it's really pushed us forward in terms of understanding of what's required, but also has led to a big difference in terms of how we more ethically and sustainably deliver conferences. So yeah, it's been great.
I'm going to come back to you about the effort it's taken to do that. And there was a question earlier about, is it expensive? Is it worth the ROI? So we'll come back to the question, but I just want to hear Florence first about your observations on the changing landscape. Has it changed the way you do your business, both leading PCMA in the Asia-Pacific region, but also the members of PCA? Are you seeing what sort of fundamental changes is making to the way they're doing business or running their businesses?
Yeah, no, so I think it's quite diverse, right? Because first and foremost, PCMA, we represent both the organizer, which both includes the associations, the independents or commercials, and then you have the corporate as well. And then we have our supplier on our other side of the membership. I think what we see beyond sustainability and technology, which we will get into a lot more, I think one of the things that we keep coming back to is the uncertainty of managing events and businesses because of the social political landscape. I think we are very blessed currently at this point. ASEAN is probably one of the most peaceful, quiet region, harmonious region at the moment. But if we look at our counterparts in Europe, in US, actually the political landscape, it's quite challenging and it's creating a lot of uncertainty, which then spirals onto the economic impact. And that's what we are seeing impacting costs. So I think one of the biggest things that we all know is that constant increasing cost that doesn't go away.
How's that increasing your cost?
Supply chain.
Supply chain.
Yeah, supply chain more than anything else. The uncertainty in the supply chain is driving it. I mean, if you think about airlines, why is airline tickets so freaking expensive right now? Right, because they are avoiding certain air routes because of the wars that's going on in some of the other regions. That's part of the reason why it's contributing to that. I think we continue.
And a bit of pent-up demand. Do you think the pent-up demand is still there as well?
There is.
From COVID, everybody now traveling?
Yeah, no, I think that has been there. The pent-up demand is there. I would only say that a lot of the airlines, the national airlines, have not come back to full capacity. Right? So for example, in our region, I think there are still airlines like Hong Kong, China, that hasn't even come back to full capacity. At best, they're probably at 80%. So Singapore Airlines, I think, has done fairly well, in terms of coming back. So I think those are the factors impacting cost. Now, the other thing that we actually continue to struggle with is the talent pool. And the talent pool is a slightly different issue. Last year, we were sitting here in this conversation about this rapid ramp up back to getting the economy going and the fact that we've lost a lot of people to the industry. I think we're still struggling with the same issue because now that it has stabilized, we know for sure that some of the more experienced folks have left for sure and not coming back. We are trying to look for the talent pipeline in our industry, and they are not very excited with what we have to offer. And that, I think, goes back to some of the other things that we will talk about, because what's really interesting is technology is second nature to them with the younger folks. And then sustainability to them is a value, a purpose that you live by. But I think we'll go more into it later. I would just add that in addition to what Shawn has already talked about, I think these are the factors that we are seeing that actually what's more interesting for us is our members constantly struggle with the human piece, the human engagement. So if we constantly do our survey and sensing, the number one thing that constantly comes up besides AI, okay, number one. Two, it's engagement. People are so busy, so tired, so wrapped up, constantly hustling from one thing to the other. It's very hard to get their attention. So as an event organizer, the number one thing is, how do I achieve, number one, convince you need to be in a room, and then secondly, keep you engaged so that you feel that there is real ROI for you being here today. So I think that's probably more what we're seeing on our side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in you talking about, you've got a very interesting perspective because you're talking about suppliers and you're talking about the customers, the event planners. What are the customers, the clients demanding of our industry at the moment? What are they saying to Shawn as a PCO, this is what I want now that you didn't deliver a few years ago? What are they saying? Greater ROI you've mentioned.
Yeah, ROI, it's a challenge because most organizers would tell you their budget has not increased.
Yes,
In fact, it has decreased.
Yep.
Because of increasing costs. So technically, their budget has stayed flat, but because of cost, what they can buy is actually less. So for them to build their business case with their business leaders, it's always about ROI.
Yep.
What am I getting in it, right? So I think the collaboration between organizers and our supplier partners, it's how do we collectively come together to get the right data points, right, to justify our ROI in spending the $1 million or not on this event or conference. I think we hear that a lot on the corporate side, so that means the in-house corporations. And the associations are slightly different because you justify less to other business units, but the fact is that you are trying to keep your conference going as being profitable, or at least, sustainable. So I think that's, again, another cost issue that we're dealing with. But I think more than anything else, I think in the association, we see a slightly different trend whereby the industries differ. So certain industries like medical coming out of COVID has actually continued to ride on the hybrid wave of COVID. So a lot of the medical associations within PCMA, we see their numbers continue to do well, even before the pandemic, because the hybrid component really works. And then the education component that the physicians and the medical practitioners need, they continue to flourish on the hybrid side. But not all industry. Our industry, PCMA try to do hybrid, forget it. It doesn't work. We belong face to face, So every industry has a slightly different need, I would say.
Yep. Florence, you covered a lot of ground there. I've got too many more questions to ask you, but I want to introduce our third panellist. This gentleman at the end, Dr. Guang Lu, is a very brave man. He started a brand new event just after COVID. Is that correct? When did you start Beyond Expo?
Yeah, we were stupid enough to start the Beyond Expo during the COVID.
So are you crazy or something? Or?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Well, let me explore that because you've actually created an event in a brand new era, a new era of the meetings industry, pre or post-COVID. What was it like? What were the big challenges you faced to bring this event? And fortunately, it's a tech event, so you're in the right sector. But what were the challenges you faced, and how have you embraced the new age of running conferences or organising and creating a brand new event, which was also mentioned earlier, that creating events can be quite a challenge?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, big thanks to myself to have me here. So actually, it's my first time to sit as speaker at the events-focused events.
Yep.
So it's very
great. Because you didn't actually know you're actually in the events industry until we spoke to you on the phone a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah. So
but you are actually in the business events industry.
Actually, I'm not aware I'm the expert in the events industry.
You are now.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So, So thanks for the question. So seriously, I think we were stupid enough to start the events, or big events during the pandemic.
Brave is the word, brave.
Bright. Okay. So, but I think back to the question. I think there's also a challenge we faced in the past 3 or 4 years. So actually, we started planning the events before pandemic, but unfortunately, we decided to do that. Then pandemic hit us. But as you said, there's also challenging. I think everybody facing as well. Financial wise, I think that the biggest challenge, just to leave the financial part, aside, I think big challenge we were facing. So first of all, because we decided to do this in Macao, everybody in Macao is a very fun place, but it's not really Like we talk about tech events, we talk about international tech events, and nothing really there. There's no ecosystem in the tech space in Macau at all.
Yeah.
So basically, we build everything from scratch. There's nothing there. We have to bring everything out of Macau and to Macau, to our events. I think this is the big challenging. Secondly, the content. We are doing tech events. Tech is everywhere. And everybody, when we talk about events, everybody understand, okay, we have to do the tech event because that's the most attractive, sector for everyone. But it's so many, but we're going to build a new one in Macau. It's challenging. We have what's the differentiation? There's so many in China, in the world. We have to stand out, and how? The second challenging. The third one, I think is, we talk about technology, and because we say that we want to build beyond as the Asian version of CES. That's our goal. But the challenging we are facing is first of all, we see the demand. I think if you look at the events landscape in the tech space, I think seriously, there's so much innovation happening in Asia, but we don't really have something like CES in the Asia region. And China, Korea, Japan, we are like the leader in the tech in some way, but we don't talk that much. Mm-hmm. And for lots of reasons. We talk about Southeast Asia is the biggest and most potential massive market for next many years. But still, we don't have like one big tech events. We can bring all these people all together. But so this is our goal. But then the challenge we're facing is for example, the language, right? For example, I think if you look at the events right now, we have 70% from mainland China, but which means everything we do, we have to do 2 times. One, we have to do marketing. Everything have to be in Chinese. Okay, that's the biggest market we're facing. Secondly, we talk about South Asia, Japan, Korea. The language is the biggest barrier for us. So like the website, we have to build like a 3-version website, which is like a triple our work. And all the facilities, all the works, we have to do multiple times because we are facing different culture. I think this is maybe the biggest challenge we are facing. If we go to like CES, I think in some ways it's easy because everybody talk English. You just want one, but here we want to build something for Asia culture.
So can I ask you how you've actually applied your knowledge of tech? It's a tech conference, so how have you applied the new technologies to make this event happen and to deal with the languages? And what sort of technology applications are you using, and is it working?
Yeah, I think this is, so just give example, we build our own apps, then we use the app we implement the simultaneous translation technology into our apps. So basically we use all the AI to do the translation.
Right.
And also we have multiple stage, so basically you can just bring your apps with the earphone. Okay, you don't need the staff to do the translation. So basically just click on the app and then say which stage you are at. Then you can just choose which language. You do the simultaneous, everything done by the AI. Mm-hmm. So I think this is something we try to adopt from technology perspective.
Okay. Let's go back to Shawn, mate. You've been quiet for the last half an hour, but I have to ask you another question. Pivoting to the changes, what have you actually done to make the changes? What is Arinex like now compared to what it was like pre-COVID? What changes, fundamental changes, have you made to that company to meet these challenges that are here now?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of changes, to be honest. We started off with our CEO buying the company just at the end of COVID, which for us was actually great. It prompted a complete rethink on how we do everything. So as a starting point, what we did is we looked at what the company values are and what our focus should be as a company over the next 5 to 10 years. And there was a lot of polling from the staff. There was talking with our vendors and industry and just seeing what's going on with current events, that sort of thing. And we identified sustainability as one of our key goals. So that's one thing we wanted to really focus on. And we also wanted to position ourselves as a tech-first company. So sustainability technology, which is probably why I got asked to this conference. But basically, the sustainability question was the bigger one to answer for us. It was, how do you solve such a huge problem? And what we did, we took a step back initially. From the very day one, we said, okay, what can we do? What can we actually put into place right now ourselves that will make a difference? So that, at the very least, as a company, we've taken ourselves off the table as being part of the problem. So our first steps into the sustainability world were to move offices to a smaller office, which was more sustainable, had better solar power, all that sort of thing.
And you also have work-at-home personnel, right? Is one of the reasons, right?
And that was exactly it.
Yeah.
So it was a benefit, I suppose, of COVID, is that we had the infrastructure in place to allow remote work to be a thing. And rather than force everyone back into the office, we embraced that. And now every one of our staff works predominantly remotely, with some days in the office. And that in itself, when we started looking at the carbon footprint and developing carbon neutral strategies, we realized was a boon, because we've taken all of the transport emissions out of our company.
Yep.
And this was, I think, a big revelation for us, is that the amount of carbon emissions that come just from the transport and logistics of our staff was enormous. And when you look at it at a conference level, you can see that it's even more pronounced. Obviously, particularly in Australia, everybody that comes to the conference is going to be flying. There's no trains to Australia. There's no cars, nothing like that. You have to fly. And if you're going to fly, then you're going to have to fly a long distance. So before we even start, we've got this problem of, thousands and thousands of people showing up in Australia specifically for things that we've created. And how do we deal with that problem? So we've been looking at that, and it's obviously, again, it's a huge problem that we can't solve on our own. We need to partner with our suppliers. We need to encourage lobbying of governments and whatnot. We need to, look at technologies that can encourage that, and we're hoping that the travel industry will be able to solve that problem. But in the meantime, we've looked at strategies and recommendations for our own staff, and also for events that we manage, on how to mitigate that damage a bit. Yep. So it really comes down to simple things that make a big difference. So one thing we've done is looked at our supply chains with our venues to try to source locally produced food. And now we're seeing a much greater increase in that mentality locally, where those conferences and events are actually providing food and entertainment from locally sourced vendors. From a delegate perspective, we're encouraging using economy class travel rather than business class, first class, to increase the number of people per plane, to reduce their individual carbon footprint, that sort of thing. So these little things, and they might only amount to a 10, 15, 20% decrease in that footprint. When you look at it at scale, that 20% can make an enormous difference. So yeah, those are the sort of the changes we're looking at making.
Yep. Just before we go in, you've still got Pigeonhole to ask any questions, which we'll bring up at the end of the session as well. But I'd like to go back to Florence. And Florence, how are you seeing the industry making the changes? Are they making the changes, and how difficult it has been? Is it a big investment? And are they seeing some ROI on the investment they're making on technology, sustainability initiatives?
Okay, this is very broad. It's challenging, right? Because sustainability has been around, and we talk about it. It's been around for a while, not a new topic.
But a bit of a token effort has been put into it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting is probably during COVID, we all saw the impact of what happens when you pause the world.
Yep.
What good it does for the world, right? For the planet Earth. So I think coming out of COVID, we see sustainability coming back to the top of the agenda. And there's been a lot more conversation. And as I talk to a lot of our members, there is a lot more constant effort placed on making sustainability one of the key decision maker. Yep. So on the supplier side, we see a lot more requests in RFP that has to do with sustainability. So there's a lot more RFP requirements. And then on the organizer side, I think there is very clear indication that cost is not the only deciding factor. So that there is, it's still not one over the other. You are still looking at a basket of decision makers, but sustainability is definitely part of it. And it's not just cost related.
Yep.
It's also emissions.
Yep.
So talking about where we get to in terms of destination, you know, like it may be a cheaper destination, but from an emission standpoint, is it a better destination or not? So I think those decisions are very calibrated, are very intentional, and I think that's the positive, that people are really thinking about it. Now, I think associations are very different from the corporates. When you talk about the corporates, especially the listed companies, it's almost mandatory that they need to do something from a listing perspective. I think associations less so, right? So then it really comes down to the membership and the board, how much people stand behind that initiative, what they are willing to compromise for what they have to give up. Yeah. So I think that's on the sustainability piece. Technology is very challenging for us. I mean, even for PCMA as an association, the whole integration from during COVID, the fact that we have to overhaul our entire system, and it's been 3 years now. I think really learning how the tech stack talks to each other, and more importantly, how our data flows, it's critical. One of the challenges that we see now, especially when we operate across multiple continents, it's the complexity of data governance, or data privacy for that matter. So I think with that, especially with technology continue to power us forward, how do we keep the organization safe from potential governance issue when it comes to data? So I think that's something that we struggle with, because that landscape is changing all the time. And I think that we hear that very much all the time as well from the members.
Okay, let's just stop for a second. I want to go to the audience to see if you're awake. Are you awake? Hands up. Okay, good. We're going to go on a polling question. I want to know a little bit about where you're at with your technology. And we're going to bring up the first polling question. The polling question is about your AI, embracement of AI. So we're going to ask you to please indicate, you've already started doing it, but are you very much into AI? Have you applied it to the business? Is your company actively developing an AI capability? Is your company interested in AI, or is your company just not interested in not going forward? So if you could please indicate on that, which you've already done. You can see there's a huge amount of hunger for AI, You've got 15% that are looking at actively developing AI capabilities, and you've got less than 6% of our industry in this room that's actually embraced AI technology. And everybody's talking about how important AI is and what it can bring to the table. Can I get our tech guy down the end to say, AI, how do you use AI, and is it working to build your conference, and are you seeing the return on investment on AI? And I'll put that to the whole panel, but I'll start off with Hong Lu.
Well, so we are building the technology, events, but I have to say, I do think AI is the future, but to be honest, I don't know how much AI is impacting the events business for now. I mean, of course, it's going to, we use AI to take care of our data, to use the AI to kind of analyze our audience. But we use AI to do the automated translation, all the stuff. But to be honest, I don't know how much AI is helpful to our events for now, because all the attendees or exhibitors all come from technology, and all the technology companies right now, they kind of claim they are AI power. But to be honest, most of them they are just telling us something about AI, but it's not really AI. It's been the technology they're using being a while for 20 years. I don't know how much they are used for, but I think to me I don't know if it's controversial, but we talk about the technology is going to disrupt the event business. But for now, we talk about accessibility, we talk about AI, or we talk about metaverse. I think all the technology, I don't think they are ready yet. I have biggest impact to us. I think it's always kind of trade-off. We have to embrace the technology, embrace the AI, but we have to be kind of realistic as well. It's still kind of fantasy. It's always good to talk about AI, but first of all, expensive. Secondly, it doesn't really helpful to raise, to grow our revenue, to grow our audience. If it doesn't do this, why we use the AI for now?
Okay, I'll go to the other two panelists, but I really want to know, there's been a lot of talk about AI being able to help enhance conferences and add to conferences in helping build relationships, networking, knowledge exchange, and creating more immersive experiences. Are you seeing that? Can you give me any practical examples of how this sort of technology is being used in the industry, and is it creating benefit? I want to convince these guys that AI is worth jumping on the wagon for. The 57% that are sitting there. And you've got the answers, right? Tell us.
All right, yeah, so the ultimate solution. For us, we actually looked into AI kind of extensively for the past year or so to get a feel of it. Exactly that. What do we do first? What is going to be the benefit? And what came back resoundingly was that, first of all, lots of the AI tools that we want to use already exist and have existed for a long time, and most of those are around data and around analyzing data to give us trends and to tell us a bit more about our participants. So for us, we focus largely on the data side of things and collecting more effective data, knowing what we want to put in place. And that's paying dividends for us. We're being able to customize conferences, and particularly in the marketing side of things, to different types of people depending on their likes and that sort of thing. Obviously, that's balanced off by the privacy aspect as well, which we'll go into, I'm sure, at some point. But in terms of what's most effective at the moment, it is, again, it's in its infancy as far as the new AI, the large language model style AI, but we're seeing a lot more traction in the interpretation space. So the instant interpretation, the language conversions, that sort of thing, is definitely the area I think right now that is hottest. It's the most tangible, and it's the one that's being able to be put into use most effectively. Being able to provide custom subtitles or even voiceovers in another language without having to pay a team of interpreters is obviously a huge benefit, because it's a large cost that in a lot of times can only benefit a small portion of the audience. If we can do that at scale, then it's something worth pursuing, we think. I mean, obviously there's a lot in that area to consider, but if I was to pick one area that I would start with looking at for conferences that are happening now, that would be it.
Right. What about customizing content for customers? Florence, are you seeing that happen? Is the industry embracing that idea of, you've got 3,000 individual conferences that all want to do different things and you want to engage younger people into the conferences? Are you seeing evidence of AI being used to customise the experience for individuals instead of trying to cater for masses?
To be honest, not really. Not yet. I think the answer is not yet. I think we're seeing use case of content capture, content repurposing. I don't think we are at a stage whereby we are using that repurposing yet to say, because I think, for example, let's just use the example of PCMA. So in our April conference, regional conference, we capture everything real time into transcript, and we repurpose everything into key summaries. And that happens instantaneous. At the same time, the same content is being interpreted into multiple language. So that's all happening. I think coming back to the ROI question, which is key, is there ROI? Yes. I mean, like the savings that we made on the interpretation, the savings that I made on not needing to have 10 copywriters in the room running all the different breakout sessions to take notes, yes, there is real ROI. Right? And what, as an organizer, I got from that, it's now I don't have 200 hours of video, I have a whole bunch of transcript, which I can immediately repurpose into blog posts, into articles, into course content, whatever you have. So I think there is real use case, right? But is it changing the world? No, but I think it really helps us in terms of productivity. So I'll give you another example, right? Like I was working on a workshop with an event agency a couple of weeks ago, and I said, guys, let's go through the RFP process, right? You receive an RFP. How do you use AI to respond to it? We divided the team into the team AI and team human. Human can do whatever you want because we're humans, right? Yay. And then AI team, you can only use AI and nothing else. So what was really interesting is the number one task that we set them out to do was take the RFP and interpret the RFP. What is it asking you for in 15 minutes? And craft the response that you would go back to the client and ask for clarification. Team humans couldn't really do it comprehensively. Well, bear in mind, it was 15 minutes, so it was designed in a way to talk about productivity. AI was able to generate that and provide a whole list of questions to be asked. Wow. Some way beyond what I was asking for. I'm like, no, you're not answering the brief right now because you were giving me too much. So again, I think we saw a lot of use case for productivity, but the human component of being able to assess and ask the right questions, I think is still missing. So I'll give you yet another example from my conference whereby we use sentiment tracker. And at the end of the day, the report came back with a whole bunch of data. Just for a single room over a 2-day conference, I had a report of 113 pages, one room. So I'm like, how am I supposed to deal with this data? So again, we put it back into AI and we summarize. But a couple of interesting data that I saw in there. So I think from an organizer standpoint, it's experience and engagement do not necessarily correlate. Which means to say that if you are here now sitting in this room for the last 30 minutes listening to us, you may be staring at your phone. Does it mean that you are engaged? From a camera, how it was tracking it, it says that you were not engaged because you are all looking at your phone. But at the end of the day, when they look at experience scoring, the experience was great. So I think it goes to talk to about like how we all listen and multitask right now. When I'm not looking at you, doesn't mean I'm not listening to you.
Yep.
If a session is 60 minutes, it doesn't mean it's less engaging than a session that is 20 minutes. Yep. So, so I think I had some really interesting points from the data that I saw. It was really at the end of the day, regardless of whether your session is 20 minutes, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes, is actually how were you engaging with the audience? Did they feel like they were part of the journey? Yeah, so I do think that, I think from a PCMA standpoint, we are a huge advocate in using technology where possible to give us additional insights to move things along faster. And especially in our region, I think technology is key in bridging culture, bridging language, and bridging the geographies.
Guangzhou, I saw you nodding your head a few times there. Are you in agreement with this?
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think the AI, I just think about a few examples. At least for AI, it does really helpful for the event organizer, like us. Yep. Just give you like a personal experience. It's really funny. Like this year we had a David Beckham as our speakers. Yeah, so actually the first draft of the question we sent to David Beckham, I said it's written by me, but actually written by the ChatGPT.
There you go.
So actually, if you look at, because we have like 3 days, I'm taking care of most of all the panel for 3 days, but actually, I used to like run myself, but because the AI, so actually it does really helpful to me because, for example, if we do a panel like this, if we have like a Google, for example, or Amazon, I need to draft the questions, right? The syntax. Yep. Then I use AI to do the all. Actually, it save us lots of times. But of course, we need modify or polish, but it does really helpful. And also for our even the marketing, we are dealing with like 300 speakers. We for the marketing purpose, we need like a kind of poster for every speakers. Hopefully, they can post on their social media. But before it spent, it took our designer like 2 months, like to do all the designings, creative works. But now it's just like 1 hour. We just give all the photos, then produce everything. So I think for the event business, I don't know how much AI going to I don't think it's going to disrupt our event business for now, but it does make our production much more efficient than before.
Great. Yeah. I'm going to pivot to another topic, which is sustainability, another big issue. At COP26 in Glasgow, the Joint Meetings Industry Council pledged the industry to a net zero carbon events commitment, but the challenge has been onboarding. So before we ask the panel, I'd like to do another poll question to the audience, asking you the same questions about your adoption of sustainable business practices. Do you use sustainable business practices? Are they in place? Do you have policies in place at the moment? Are you developing them? Are you interested in learning more about it? And has your company got no interest? It's really good to see a 0 at the bottom of that poll. But there's a lot of activity in this space by the sound of it. How difficult is it to get the industry to onboard sustainable business practices? Shawn.
It really varies from venue to venue, vendor to vendor, supplier to supplier. There seems to be two camps at the moment, at least in Australia. There's the ones that are all for it, and we have some of our convention centers and whatnot that are very much leading the charge. They're setting the expectations on what the industry should be doing from a sustainable standpoint. They're encouraging people and they're developing best practices around that. And we're finding that suppliers that deal directly with those convention centers tend to be slowly improving along those lines. But at the same time, we've got other suppliers that really don't do much with it. And they, for the most part, it's business as usual. They see it as a nice to have potentially, or as an add-on that's going to cost money. And what's interesting though is we're finding that they're pretty quickly becoming the minority. So as it sits right now, I'd say that we probably have, 10% gold standard venues and suppliers that are out there, and they're really making all the difference in the world. A solid 80% is exactly kind of what this poll is showing, is that trying to do better, but maybe not knowing how to do better. And I think that's one key area where we're trying to focus on, and we're doing it internally as well, is to develop conversations and to make sure we have our own way of helping our suppliers and our vendors to make those green choices. And then, as I said, the ones that are not doing it are being left behind at the moment. And honestly, they have, at this point, nearly missed out. So the one nice thing that we're seeing in the industry, though, is that the leaders, the ones that are really pushing forward, they've actually developed a niche at the moment that is very much in demand. So they're able to command higher prices and get more businesses. We've got hotels in Cairns, for example, that are essentially book solid because they have a green philosophy. They have a zero waste philosophy, a low carbon emission philosophy. And these are the things that every conference that we're talking to now is saying, well, we want to target those ones first. Because as Florence said, it's not always a case of we're worrying about the money aspect of it, we're worried about the emissions aspect of it as well. So that's, as I said, becoming a big part of the conversation, and we're seeing a massive trend towards more adoption.
Okay, I'm going to ask Florence a question, but while we're doing that, do we have any questions coming from the audience? We'd like to move to some audience's questions, if we've got any questions on Pigeonhole. Florence, just with regards to onboarding, what is it going to take to onboard the industry and get them committed to this? Is it when they start losing business? Because what Shawn was saying is it's becoming a mandatory, not a must-have. What's it going to take to get the industry to move? We've got a lot of interest there, but what's it going to take?
That's a tough question.
That's a very tough question. I save the tough questions to last every time. Just you wait.
Because we've been talking about this for like maybe 30 years now, guys, right? I mean, about why are we not onboarding this? And I think there's always two perspectives. The supplier market would always say that the clients are not asking, or the clients are asking, but they're not paying, right? So then from a PCMA perspective, I'm like, yes, okay, I've been hearing this. So let's try and do something different. So sort of 2 years back, we did a different piece of research where we go to the organizers and we ask them, what is your challenge? Why are we not implementing this? So what came back to us was, we are overwhelmed. There are so many options. So when you put an RFP out, there are so many options with varying standards, with different calculations, and that as an organizer, if you think about that's not the only job that you do, on top of everything else, you are overwhelmed to make a decision on actually this decision, this purchase that I'm making, is it making real impact? So I think what it's critical for us is, I would say, sometimes we overthink, right? We overthink it, and I think what we then try to do is, within the remit of an organizer, do what you can do with like 3 steps or to 5 steps. Immediate actions that you can take that will make an impact today. Right? And I think sometimes we get paralyzed, right? Because bear in mind here, there are continents like our Europe counterparts that are way advanced, way advanced. I mean, when I went to a Europe conference, it was hilarious because they serve lots of greens and greens only. And the only meat on the table is chicken for 3 days, for 3 meals per day. So at the end of that 3-day conference, we were like, oh my God, what a menu, chicken and greens. This is not acceptable in this culture. So it's the balance, the art of balancing that we are still trying to find in this part of the world, because a lot of my members say, I put sustainable food on the menu. My delegates went out to eat because they didn't want to deal with my bio food, right? So I think it's where I always say that, we can, as an organizer, impact certain things like F&B, we can impact the venue that we choose, but asking that the venue be green in that you are using clean energy, you have a good waste management system. So these are the stuff that we look for right now, because I think these are things that as an organizer, no matter which city, which country you go into, you can't change all of that on your own. You have to work with your partners, your venue partners, your destination to do that. But that said, I think it's about educating your stakeholders, your delegates, your exhibitors, your sponsors, your members on, you have to join in the game. So when we say, hey, it's actually possible to take a train, you don't all need a transfer, maybe that's true, right? And then, we try and provide balanced diet, but people need to accept that. So I think at the end of the day, I would say that we don't do enough of a job. I think that's something being top of mind. It's we need to not just educate ourselves. I think we ourselves need to continue learning about what's available out there, but also educating our stakeholders on what they need to do and how they can be part of that journey.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. Let's go to the audience questions. Number one on the voting block is, how can event organisers effectively balance the integration of technology with the preservation of authentic and engaging in-person experiences to create a sustainable future for the business events? Who wants to go for that one?
I'll take that one.
Yep, go Shawn.
Yeah, I think the question here is, it's not an either-or question. I think that events can be entirely in person, they can be entirely tech, but generally speaking, they're going to be a combination of both. What I think is most important before even asking this question is asking, what does your audience want? What does the delegate, what do they want? Do they want to have an online experience, or are they primarily doing a training thing for, if you're CPU points, something like that, where you're going to be sitting there and wanting to learn something, in which case an online purely tech solution might be appropriate, or is this a networking thing where the in-person element is most important? So first of all, it's really clear to understand what type of event you're going to produce before you even start thinking about technology, and then use technology as a tool to meet those needs. And again, it can take any number of forms in terms of what technology you're using, but the trap that people fall into, I suppose, is to say this has worked before on this event, it's going to work out on the other event. Every event is different, and you've got to approach that with a mindset of how are we going to do the best one we can, given the tools that we have.
Great answer. Any other responses? No?
I mean, I agree with what just Shawn said. I would only add that from a customer's perspective, right? I mean, we really need to think about the front-facing, that means the user interface, right? Because bear in mind that the consumers today, which is your participants, your delegates, whatever you call that, are very used to the technology provided by the Amazons of the world, where everything is a single click away.
Yep.
I think our complexity is when you try and create a tech stack that requires 10 clicks to get to one thing, or scan 10 apps to get a good experience, that's where it's not synergized, right? So I think there's a lot more work within our space, with the event technology space, that I don't think we are creating that seamless experience yet. And I think that's the work for, again, between organizers and tech partners to come together and say, how do you really create that seamless journey?
Guangzhou, you had
Yeah, I think I agree. I think for technology, I think do not rush to the technology itself. I think we only adopt technology which can benefit our audience or our customers. So we do that. Just give like example, like we use AI or technology to help on the simultaneous interpretation. We use that because that's to build international events. That's something we have to have. But another example is, I think that during the COVID, I'm sure like lots of people came to us say, hey, you need to build a metaverse, like kind of for the events. It's like they say, oh, your events, if you do offline, only 3 days, but if you do metaverse, it's like 365 days a year. It's like a never stop events. Well, that sounds very good, but we try that. We realize it doesn't make sense at all. Why people get along, metaverse, 365 days, And also, we think about international. It's very funny. We did bounce back to like 2 years ago, 2022. Then we realized, okay, we tried to build something for international communities, but we forgot about the time difference, right? Because during the daytime, it's only Chinese there. It's not international. Then all the Chinese went to sleep. Then during night, all the international people came in. Then it turns out it's not really international. So but of course, there's something we need to look at. But end of the day, if we realize that some technology is good, but nobody benefit, then we stop.
Great. Okay. Could we go back to the questions, the other questions? Let's see if we can get through as many. We've got 8 minutes left for this session, and we've got quite a few questions coming up. The next one is, how can companies prepare for potential cybersecurity threats during large-scale events? Who would like to take that one on board? It's a big issue. Hasn't been raised today.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess cybersecurity, if you break it down, really, it boils down to data security, which I think is something that we, as an industry, should be taking probably more care with than we currently are. I think having a really solid foundation in data privacy is really, really important, so that we're eliminating the potential targets for a cybersecurity attack by not having that data available to be attacked. So that's probably the first thing. I mean, obviously, there's other aspects of cybersecurity in itself. It's a pretty major topic, But really, I think it comes down to the same thing with most events: is you're going to have a risk management plan in place. You're going to have to look at it and say, well, what's the realistic chance of a cybersecurity attack? What are the likely outcomes of that attack? And how would we mitigate that? So there's a whole range. I mean, this is an entire subsection of technology that can, we can talk for days, but it really boils down to what are the risks, what are the chances of them happening, and how are we going to deal with them? And on the whole, I think I would recommend that most organizers and venues and whatnot, they actually take a cybersecurity expert as a partner and go through this stuff, ask the right questions, and at least eliminate the low-hanging fruit that are potential major security risks as a starting point, and then from there go on.
Anybody else want to add? No?
No comments on this one.
No comments? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm definitely
Can I just ask, it's just so we can try and get through many,
Yeah.
just see if we can do short 1 minute responses. Yeah, great.
Right, so for me, like I said, I'm not an expert on this. The only thing that I would say is that, in terms of resources for the industry, Copenhagen did a study last year that is all about risk management for security. So look into that. And then secondly, PCMA have a course coming up that we're launching probably next month that is focused on risk management and cyber.
Bit of a plug going on here, but
yeah, that's a
good.
plug. I haven't looked at the content, so I can't tell you what's in there. But I would say that yes, we have been seeing this coming up a lot more.
Yep.
And there are some emerging resources out there.
Great, good. Next question, please. What are the key challenges and opportunities in balancing technological innovation with sustainable practices? Anybody want to comment? It's kind of the theme of this whole
Still
conference.
trying to dissect the question.
Yeah, I think, the first thing that jumps to mind on that one is AI, understanding that, when you're using AI, you're using some of the biggest data centers in the world, which consume a lot of electricity and whatnot. The concept, I suppose, is understand what the impact of what you're doing is. Look into the entire chain and get an idea of what it is that's, how it's impacting sustainable practices. There's a billion types of different techs, and they all have different impacts, but look into them in detail.
Well, I guess my question is, I'm not...
Your question, you were actually...
My question, whoever who's doing this, maybe we can have a conversation on Pigeonhole. But, I'm wondering, what do you mean by sustainable practices? Because it's very broad, right? So if I would interpret it, I would almost say sustainability practices, sustainability in business. So if you go at that angle, I would say that we all have to recognize that, the technology is something like air and water right now, right? It's everything that that underpins what we do. So, but again, you're not going to decide what technology is going to work for you and your business until you figure out what is it that you want to do for your business and for your events or for your delegates, if that makes sense, right? I think it's always coming back to the why.
Yeah. Well, technology in itself is actually something that actually help you embrace sustainable practices of anything. So it's not really a conflict necessary there at all, is there?
I don't see it as a conflict. I mean, like, you know, people would argue that if you do hybrid events, you create less emissions.
It's a sustainable practice.
It's a sustainable practice. But, you know, again, is it something that is doable? Is it acceptable? But, you know, there's always calibration in the decision-making process. It's not one or the other. So how much of the experience are you going to sacrifice by doing hybrid? Is it worth it? I think those are the questions, which comes back to what Shawn said right at the beginning, is the why. Yep. What are you trying to do?
Okay, let's move on to the next question, please. What are some of the changes or even risks that you think the industry should be more cautious of?
Well, I would say sustainability, right? More than anything else. And I say that in the sense of climate change.
Yep.
Right? Because if we look at everything that has happened, I mean, volcano eruptions and everything can stop our industry anytime. More pandemics can stop our industry anytime. I think we just see a lot more natural disaster than anything else, right? And that's driven by climate change.
It's also about creating more sustainable business practices. I mean, how do you pivot? How does a company pivot? We were living in a very unstable global environment. How do we pivot to minimise risk? Someone asked the three of you to sort of respond to that, just to close off if we can.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly add to what I was just saying, that I think the one thing that we should challenge ourselves, and it's not an easy one, especially when we are in a very cost-sensitive market, right, which ASEAN is, what do we need to do to completely change our business around? And I'll say that, for example, today, if you are a stand builder, and your business is really built on building stands for exhibitions around the world, but even when we come to the day whereby sustainability no longer requires us to do it. Everything can be digital. You just need LED screens, and I don't need any more stands. Are you going to be out of business, or are you going to start thinking about what should my business look like to move towards that very extreme destination?
I mean, there's a lot of changes and risks out there at the moment, and you don't know what the next curveball is going to be. There's now an MPOX warning globally that's come out of the World Health Organization. There is unrest in different parts of the world. So there is a lot of risk. It's actually making sure your company can make the changes and pivot as necessary. Shawn?
Yeah, I agree.
Is Arinex geared up for changes? What sort of pivots have you made to address some of these big challenges?
For us, I think what we've done is we've just embraced change. We understand now, I think, more than ever that change is a reality. It's something that's going to be ever present, especially it's going to probably increase as we go along. And being flexible and having the right staff that are able to adapt to those changes quickly and efficiently, and having the process in place to do that is absolutely key. Because like I say, we don't know what's coming up, so we just want to be able to cater as best as we can for anything.
Yeah, I want to go to the last question, because one about, there's something you brought up early, the ravel, but that's travel. How do you diffuse that issue of being along? Especially Australia has that issue. How do we address that?
There's multiple ways. Obviously, it's a big challenge for Australia because everybody travels to Australia on an airplane. But basically, the ones that we've worked for us, we have obviously going hybrid. It does help. Having hub and spoke conferences where you have a more locally centralized satellite event might also help. And also just encouraging people to do things like the carbon offset and traveling, I said, in smaller seats, basically, where you have a higher number of people per plane.
Yep. Okay, listen, I think we need to do a wrap. I've got a 0 on my countdown there. I want to thank you all very much for your time and your input today. It's been fantastic. Please give our panel a big round of applause. And if you've got further questions, I think you're all joining us for lunch in the next hour or so. So queue up to their tables while they're munching away and ask them more questions if you'd like to. So thank you very much, and see you after lunch, returning at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike, please remain on stage, and I'd like to now invite Ms. Tan Mei Ping, the Director of Event Facilitation of MICEP, to present a token of appreciation to all of our speakers on stage. We begin with Florence Chua, the Managing Director of Professional Conference Management Association. Next, Dr. Gang Lu, the co-founder, Beyond Expo, founder and CEO of TechNode Group. Mr. Shawn Daws, Senior Technical Project Manager, Arinex Private Limited. And Mr. Mike Williams of GainingEdge. And if I could call upon our speakers to come forward for a group photograph. Lovely, lovely, big smiles. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a warm round of applause. Great panel session there. The evolving landscape of business events, embracing technology and sustainability. And I echo what Mike mentioned, and I hope that you will be able to engage with them during lunchtime.